What is the state of the industry right now?
Oh, that's an easy one to start with.
Yeah.
Uh, Stopped.
It's
I
just,
mean, I have friends who work in Portugal, in England. Everyone is like home. Um, so there doesn't seem to be a lot of work going around. And a lot of people are looking for alternate paths in careers.
yeah.
I mean, I think the hope is that it picks up soon, but yeah, it's been a few weird years actually, not just the strikes, but obviously COVID. I think people, freelancing is already a choice that you sort of, you know, I mean, I love it, but it comes with its ups and downs, and I think the last few years really, I personally started thinking about retirement and saving money,
Really? For
and
real?
like, yeah, it's like, oh wait, if this isn't gonna like, I got to worry a little bit more than I do.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it's there's a lot of stuff happening, not just that, but obviously AI and all the I'm not a pessimist. I actually think all of those things will have a place to be used in a positive way, but they will have to be really thought out, and we'll have to see, what that brings to the table. So it's definitely a moment of change, but those have happened in the last century multiple times, and
Yeah.
entertainment has always stuck around. So entertainers, storytellers, they'll always be needed. We'll see in what form, but I'm not a pessimist about it, is how I would say it.
Good. Good. I feel like it's a kick in the butt for people to make better stuff. I think that's part of it, right? It's
Sure.
I know that's like might be just like me being Pollyanna-ish of just like we just need good stuff and people will go to the movies, but a lot of things are combined to get us to where we are right now, and one of those is like people not going to the theaters as much.
Yeah.
And a big part of that is, at least from the lay people that I talk to, it's like, there's nothing good to see. There's nothing good to see. Um, so start there.
Make better stuff.
Make better stuff. I mean, yeah, there's always something good to see, but you got to seek it out. We're lucky, we're spoiled when you live in LA and there's all these like art house theaters and we have the New Beverly and the Vista and the Cinematheque and all that stuff. But that's not the majority of the United States, right?
No, but I also know of people who've released movies on their own on like iTunes and even Vimeo, and they've paid for their movies that way. So it really is, there's always a good side and a bad side. I find that the same way that cameras had a revolution and, digital cinema changed the cost somehow of making an image that looks professional, whatever that means. I find that the same is happening with sort of consumer electronics. I have a projector at home, and if I am watching something that I really care about, I'll project it. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, I think nothing beats the experience of going to a theater, but um, but all these new ways to watch movies and to make movies, hopefully, what they'll do is create new avenues for great people to break in and to have a way to be seen. And then obviously the studios will come and like, take those people and have them do Jurassic Park 10. So, but
It's, that was both hopeful and cynical all at the
yeah,
same time.
that's the life of a DP.
I guess that's what realistic is. Yeah. Taking both the good and the bad.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
well,
also a
let's talk about how
non-answer,
you
which
got.
I'm a fan of.
Yeah, exactly. I'm curious to hear about, how you got to where you are, but through this place called AFI. We'll just call it film school. We don't have to get specific, but where did you start out? Where are you from?
Lisbon, Portugal.
Lisbon, Portugal.
So I grew up in Lisbon. Um, I've always wanted to be in movies. As a kid, my dream was to be an animator. I wanted to work for Walt Disney. That was like my childhood dream.
What was the Disney movie that you saw that lit your fire?
Lion King. I mean, I'd seen a lot of their movies before, but The Lion King, I saw that in theaters and it hit me in a way that I was like, how do you do this to people? I want to do this to people. I want to be involved with whatever this magic thing is. And I actually ended up studying animation for a little bit during high school at like a weekend school. I would go and study animation, and that's how I started learning about the language of filmmaking, what a shot was, and a close up, and that there was editing and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Uh,
Were
and
you
you know,
drawing?
it's
Were you practicing drawing?
yeah, I always drew. So
Yeah.
all my school books had little flip books in the corners. I was obsessed with creating movement out of nothing. I think I always had a bit of an engineering brain. Like the magic of filmmaking was always what attracted me to filmmaking. It all felt a little bit like I wanted to know how it was done. It was a lot of it was like this technical sort of curiosity. Um, and as I got older, I think the movies that I was watching started to change. And when I was 14, cable TV came to Portugal for the first time. So I grew up on four channels. And when I was 14, suddenly I had like 30 or 40. And one of those channels played Hollywood movies 24 hours. And in between the movies, they would play these featurettes of how the movies were made.
Oh
And I
yeah.
would record them on VHS just to pause when you saw a shot of behind the scenes, because I wanted to know why those movies didn't look the way that my movies looked. So getting older and having that little bit of access to like the behind the scenes of filmmaking sort of slowly changed my dream from animation to live action. And then I went to the National Film School in Portugal when I was 18, so straight out of high school. Um, had no idea what cinematography was, I think, as many people who end up being cinematographers. And the first year of film school in Portugal is what they call a common year. So everyone can do any discipline. There are no disciplines in the first year. So I tried a little bit of everything. And I had the most fun shooting. So second year I picked cinematography, and that was my major. Um,
Is it a part of that because of what you were talking about, like that engineering part of your brain, like because it can be very technical, mechanical.
yeah, I was the kid who, I pulled all my toys apart. I was always making stuff, and so I was always fascinated with that side of filmmaking. And I remember starting to read the American Cinematographer and understanding that film was shot or movies were shot on film, and somehow there was a piece of film that was going through a gate 24 times a second. It made no sense to me. It seemed like that there's got to be a better way to do this, is what I thought when I was young, because it just felt so artisanal. Yeah, it was kind of fascinating, just that side of the technical side of filmmaking. Um, so I did film school in Portugal, and then when I finished, I started out as a camera assistant, and this was before the digital revolution. So I was mostly on commercial sets and I would try to do one movie a year as an AC, but I started out ACing mostly in commercials, which was a super fast paced environment. And I got paired with some really amazing ACs in Portugal and some amazing DPs in Portugal. Um, so I learned a lot from that perspective of being an AC. Um, but the it, it the market in Portugal was very small, and I was kind of afraid to end up getting stuck as an AC. So I started slowly searching for, you know, plans to change that. And I ended up studying a year abroad at FAMU, the Czech Film School. It was an exchange program that Europe has called Erasmus. So you basically get paid to go study abroad, which is kind of amazing. And so yeah, I had a bunch of classmates from all over Europe, and I had heard about Camrimage, the festival in Poland for cinematography. And I convinced a bunch of my friends in Prague to get on a train, a night train to Poland. And we spent an amazing week in Łódź at Camrimage. And I saw the films that were being made at AFI. That was my first real sort of contact with what AFI was. And I remember being blown away by the quality of the AFI films. And I think because I was already having an experience of living abroad that year, and I saw that the quality of the films being done at AFI, this was 2004, and that's when the seed was planted. And
Mm.
then it took a while for me to sort of get all the everything in line, but that's where I sort of decided I'm going to give this a try. And because my dream to come to LA was from a childhood dream of working for Walt Disney. That was always there, I think. And this just was a new way to do it. Um,
What do you remember what you saw at Camera Maj?
yes, The Red Veil, I think was the name of the
Oh,
movie.
I remember that.
I want to say it was the Red Veil. It was definitely the Red something. And I've looked up that DP and God, I wish I'd remember his name right now. Um,
I'm looking it up in the background
okay.
because I feel like I remember that. Oh, so that wait, I think that's 2005. Yeah, Tariq Karam was the director, and the cinematographer was Brian Burgoyne, who has a pretty good career. Brian Burgoyne, um, who shoots. I mean, he's got a ton of features. That's so funny. That's so funny. We should. I wonder if do you never connected with him, huh?
I didn't. No, that's a good I should. I should.
Wow. I
Um,
yeah. I should just send him this little clip right here. Like,
yeah.
yeah,
But yeah,
you
Kev,
look him up when we get off, and you'll see
for
like, oh
sure.
yeah, I
Yeah.
know these movies, like a Netflix movie from
I remember I did, especially when I was applying to AFI.
yeah,
But I was a very different person then. I was very shy. Reaching out to people felt like this very sort of unclimbable mountain to me. But yeah, I mean, between the Portuguese film school, the Czech film school, going to Poland, that's sort of what brought me to AFI in LA. Um,
now you had to apply with like a reel, right?
yeah, yeah. I was actually on a waiting list to get into AFI. I came in with a lot of a seeing experience, but pretty much none as a cinematographer. So I didn't really have a reel, and I went and shot. I borrowed a camera, and again, this was like film times. It was really hard to get anything done because you couldn't get a DSLR or anything like that. If you wanted something that looked professional, again, whatever that means, you should be shooting 35. And so I borrowed a camera with like I think a Pro 35 adapter, and I went out to Lisbon and started just shooting shots, and I edited those. And there were I think a few clips from maybe my film school years film school movies. Uh, so I put together a reel, but I knew it was not the strongest part of my application. And I kind of mentioned that in my application that it was time for me to try this new thing. And
Yeah.
yeah,
You remember the interview? Who you talked to?
Lighthill, Stephen Lighthill.
In
And I
Lido. Yeah.
flew to LA to do it. And it's actually funny because I stayed at a hotel that on a map looked pretty close to AFI, and I was early to the interview, so I decided to get off the bus. I took the bus to the interview. I
Wow.
decided to get off one stop early, so because I had time to kill and I could see LA. And one stop, a few blocks in LA is not a few blocks in Europe, so I ended up being late for my interview. And I didn't know there was a hill that I had to climb either at AFI. So I showed up super sweaty, extremely nervous to my interview and late. um, yeah, it wasn't
Yeah,
great.
yeah, it's funny. That is a good point because on a map everything's flat and you're like, I'm here and AFI's there.
Yeah,
But when you're in reality, you're like, you see it and it's like this the steepest hill in the world, and it's the last thing you have to do to get to the place.
yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, you never get used to it.
Nope.
Oh, well, that's a good introduction to the place for you.
Yeah, I
It probably
drove after
takes
that.
away the nerves, you're like just like burn it all off, right?
Did that's not what happened, but
Well, it worked out. You got in. So
yes.
then you moved out. So coming to LA was just for film school. Like you had not been
Yeah.
here before,
Yeah, I
besides.
knew no one in LA. I knew I had one contact in LA and that was it. And yeah, so I just moved here to go to school and I still feel like AFI was obviously the beginning of everything. My first few jobs, I can still trace so much of the stuff now to AFI. And it's within 1 or 2 degrees of separation. I met this person at AFI and they introduced me to this person. And
Yeah.
it really is a very obvious tree for me because I literally had no other contacts in this country um,
Yeah.
in the film business. So it really all started at AFI and the relationships I made there.
Yeah. Okay. I want to hear about the who those people are, but at first I want to hear about like the AFI experience because it's like you said, you weren't really a cinematographer. You were more of an AC and a camera operator. And then now you're amongst this class where you're all identifying as cinematographers. And I just remember, I just know because I've used to run it and I sat in it many times, of this thing that we would do called Reel Day, where you'd all sit together, the new class. It's like the second day of school. You barely know each other, and you're all in the big theater watching each other's work on the big screen. Most of you have never seen your work on the big screen, and then you're
Yeah.
showing it to your peers. It's what goes through your mind in that scenario.
My first trimester at AFI, I was convinced I was going to get kicked out the whole time. I thought, because there's this thing that looms at AFI of whether you're not, or not you're going to be invited back, and there's a lot of imposter syndrome, obviously, in that world, and even in the professional world of filmmaking. But I remember, you also get a little PDF with everyone's bios before you start, and you see what everyone in your class has done before school starts. And even though he was more normal back then to to come into AFI as an AC because there weren't as many opportunities, the digital revolution hadn't happened. So not a lot of people were making independent film. Uh, Maybe I think that's true. I don't know, um, but I remember reading the bios of my classmates, and so and so has shot 4 features, and so has done this, has done that, and I had done none of that. So I came in, and I was on a waiting list, so all of that really like kind of got into my head, and the first trimester at AFI was really hard, and like my cycle one, you have to pair up, and I was super shy, and you're basically interviewing for these jobs, right? And I'm a shy Portuguese person who doesn't have any experience with that, and I ended up not even teaming up for a cycle. There was a director who hadn't arrived yet, and so I got the director who wasn't there yet. That was my
Wait,
cycle
really?
one. Yeah, yeah. And
Oh,
then
wow.
cycle one went really great, and suddenly everything changed, at AFI. But the first few months were really, really scary, and I felt like I was definitely, you know, you feel this need to prove yourself, and you will hear a lot about this AFI reputation and how you're building, and there's the thesis of year two that's always this, in the horizon, and you want that thesis to be your calling card because it's the only movie that you do at AFI. Well, mostly the only project you can really show outside. So you want that movie to be your first step into a career. And so what you do in the first year determines what kind of thesis you get in the second year in many ways. And so you're very concerned. It's a super high pressure environment. Um, the real day, I ended up shooting a PSA in Portugal just before I left. Um, and that was shot on 35, and I was proud of it. So instead of showing a reel, I showed that at the real day. Um,
Oh,
and
just showed that in its
I just
entirety.
showed that PSA. Yeah, it was like a
Oh,
one
nice.
minute thing. Um, so
And it
that
went
was,
well. It was
yeah, that was
received well.
helpful for me for sure. But
Yeah.
but you'd get like I would go on these interviews for cycle one, and people would read their notes that they wrote about my reel during the screening, and they would say like good handheld, things like that. That was one of I remember very specifically a producer who became a really good friend of mine saying that on that interview. Uh, and I was just a fish out of water. I had no idea what was happening. But that's what AFI does. It puts you in really uncomfortable positions, and it makes you. I think that AFI, regardless of what the experience is that you come in with, AFI finds a way to really test you and to teach you the stuff that, if you pay attention, it teaches you the stuff you need to learn in that moment.
Yeah.
Um, so, I mean, for me, it was the place where I went from being a technician to I was embarrassed to say I wanted to be a cinematographer when I was an AC in Portugal because you're supposed to be quiet and load the mags, and do your job. So AFI was the place where I really kind of slowly built my confidence. And because I had zero lighting experience, that's mostly what I focused on at AFI. So I gapped a lot for other fellows' projects. And yeah, I think AFI really gave me the confidence to feel like I could do it. In some ways, AFI does that too much. And you come out of AFI thinking you're ready and you're gonna kill it. And then you get a dose of reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
The industry will, they'll smack some
Yeah,
sense into you.
you
Yeah.
you have a few classes with Kaminsky and whoever the guest is that week, and you feel like you're a part of the industry in LA somehow, but you're not.
Yeah.
Um,
That's what's cool. The cinematography discipline like brings in some really cool guest teachers. You had Kaminsky came in, Janusz.
Yes, yeah, we had amazing people. We had deacons come in, and
Wow.
then our year, Amy Vincent was one of our teachers when I was a second
Mm.
year, and she basically day one she asked us, "Who do you guys want to come and teach you a class?" So we were able to write a list of people we wanted, and Amy being Amy was able to bring most of those people in. So yeah,
Wow.
the access that AFI gives you is incredible. You can also pick up the phone and say, I'm a student at AFI. Will you let me borrow this camera?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of access you get from being an AFI fellow.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk about a moment like in that first year of something like a big mistake maybe that you made that you learned from, whether it was like not knowing protocol or the interpersonal relationship, collaboration type things.
Mhm. Oh, that's hard. It's been a while. I had a lot of on-set experience as an AC. So the the being on set part was it was actually fascinating to me because I'm coming from this small country and now I'm in Hollywood. So you have this feeling that everything is going to be so much bigger and so much different. And then you realize it's the same everywhere. And the people who end up on film sets, all no matter what country you're in, there's always like a certain type. And so being on set wasn't nerve-wracking. I think for me, my biggest mistake was crewing up for cycle one and just being not understanding the assignment. Like people would ask me, so what's your experience with this? And I would be super honest and say, I have no experience with that. Or there was no, I didn't understand that we were already in this competitive environment that you had to sort of um, sell yourself. And that's always been the hardest thing for me to do in my career is that side of things. The political, the social side, those are difficult in some jobs and super easy in other jobs. But the marketing side of the job, I think, is really something that you're not prepared for. And interviewing for jobs is hard. And again, cycle one, I didn't book a job. No one picked me, and I ended up with this great director who showed up late. So I was lucky, but yeah, I think that my fear got in the way a lot at AFI, especially in the beginning, and that is a lesson that I still have to learn constantly, I think.
Really?
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
because you're always hoping for better jobs, bigger jobs, different jobs, whatever it is, and I find that it's when you're uncomfortable that there's opportunity to do something different, and that's when you discover new things. But being uncomfortable usually for me means being a little bit afraid.
Yeah.
So it's more about managing the fear, and like I've learned how to deal with it. But at AFI, it was really, really consuming for me. Um, I was really shy, and I think AFI also helped bring a side of me that is not very Portuguese, that is,
Yeah.
a little more of a go-getter and able to interview and talk to people. So yeah.
And it's not taught. That part is not like a class. You're just kind of thrown in it and you have to survive. And you mentioned the word imposter syndrome, and everyone's going through it. Just people are, dealing with it in different ways. And yeah, I guess you were being honest about it. You had fear,
Yeah, but no one wants to hire a guy who says he's afraid,
I
like
know,
this
even though they're
shows.
being they're the one person being honest.
Yeah, but that's the part of like and it's not about hiding your fears. Like I think on set when I don't know something, now it's really easy for me to be like, I don't know, let me think about it. But yeah, I think
That's
there's
that.
also
Yeah, I was gonna say like that. That's like real confidence is when you can be open about not knowing something and just sharing that. Be like, I don't know, or what do you think, or let's find out.
yeah, and it's also about creating space for you to find a way to be comfortable in whatever thing is being thrown at you. You just basically say pause, and
Yeah,
you gain a little bit of time to reassess. but there's also a lot of different personalities, right? And I think in film school, you're dealing with a lot of different people. And I think there's people who excel at that, meeting people and um, being sort of yeah, just being social and having you know, having an ability to what's the word?
Well, there's some people that are really good at the social game. It doesn't mean they're necessarily the best at their craft, right? There's like being good in a room.
Yeah, but I actually think that that's at least a third of the job. So I think that he's
Mm.
actually being good at the job. I find that there's a few things that go into having a successful career in film, and that's one of them. They all can, you know, one of them alone can get you an amazing career if you in the right if you get the right opportunity. But I think you have to play the things you're good at. That's you should just, you know, invest in the things that you know how to do and try to get better at the things you don't know how to do. But I wish I was better at that stuff, you know. I think I've grown to be better at interviewing. Um,
Yeah.
so that's something that you have to do in the job. So you have to figure out a way to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, even the expression "be good in the room" gives me anxiety. What room?
Yeah, I know. You're afraid to go in the room. You're like, because that's
Yeah,
where I need to be good in there. I'll just stay out here. Yeah.
yeah.
What do you remember a moment where it like a light bulb moment where it like clicked in where you're like, oh, I can do this. I'm good at this. Like, was it a moment on set or like a reaction to one of your films or a Bill Dill moment where you felt the confidence of you're like, yeah, okay, I got this.
There was a moment on my cycle one where the first shot we did was a wide shot, and I did a shaft of light coming through a window with haze, as one does. And and then we got into the coverage and I had no idea how to light the coverage. And suddenly I realized that there was this physical shaft of light in the room. You could touch it. It was really there because it was hitting the smoke. And I realized my source of lighting doesn't have to be the window now. It can be the shaft of light. So I lit the rest of the scene emulating as if the shaft of light was kicking light into the room and bouncing the shaft of light. And it was it was an epiphany for me when it comes to lighting, because lighting for me was a mystery. It was, why do I put the light anywhere? I didn't understand. I had no concept of lighting, both technically or from a storytelling point of view. And that moment made me understand that no matter what room I get, no matter what scene I get, no matter what genre I get, if I think about it long enough, I can motivate whatever kind of light I want. Uh, and I like motivated lighting. I think lighting should be seamless in the room, in the tone. Like there's room for big lighting, small lighting, but I think it should be seamless in the movie you're making or the project you're making. And so I'm always trying to find ways to hide lighting. And to me, to hide the lighting is to make it feel like the room is created a light. Or and that moment to me was really it completely changed, or it opened up the doors to how I see lighting today. Um, and it was it was literally in the moment. I went into cycle one not really knowing what I was going to do. It was, you know, I smoked the room, I threw a HMI through a window, and then the rest was kind of just grew from there.
That's what I was
Um,
going to ask you. Like, you didn't go in with a plan except for that one shot, and then you were
I,
like, "Oh wait, I got to get coverage now."
well, no. We had a plan. We had a shot list. I just didn't know exact. I think in my mind, I thought the window was going to be the source for every shot. But then I realized that if I kept lighting from the window, it was just going to be front lighting. It was going to be bad. So then I looked left and there was a shaft of light on my left. And I was like, I'm just going to motivate light from here because it's going to look better. And it worked and it looked believable. It felt like it was coming from the room. And yeah, that was a huge epiphany when it came to lighting.
That's great, and it also it teaches you to like, because that's a big kind of a risk in the moment, right? But like, you then you see it works, and you're like, oh, my instincts are right. I can rely on my instincts.
Yeah. And also, I mean, I think it's great to come in with a plan, but I find that the more the more you can let the day speak to you in terms of what you should be doing, because you make these plans on a piece of paper a month or two before with a director in a, you know, shitty office, and then you're in a real set, you're on a set or on a location, you have the actors, everything is changing. And I think at AFI, we get really precious about our prep. We want things to be like, no, but that's not what we said we were going to do. Like, this is what I prepared for. And the more I do it, the more I do prep so I can feel like I can just abandon it. And there's something really freeing to just, you know, blocking the scene in the morning. And then from that information that you can garner from the blocking, uh, decide how, you know, not, you're not deciding everything, but you're deciding the little details that are hopefully going to make the scene, because you're there to capture something. You're there to, um, sometimes you can feel like you're imposing your plan on a scene or an actor. And I think if that happens, then you have to really consider if it's the right choice. And I think prepping too much can do that, or holding on to your prep too much can do that.
Yeah. Another part of, like, you know, film school, and I know it's a big thing at AFI, is critiquing each other, learning how to take critique and learning how to give it. And, you know, you said that you were shy, so that sometimes that could be hard on both ends, right?
Yeah,
Talk about your how you navigated that.
I think I rarely gave critique in narrative workshop. Narrative workshop is the class where every discipline watches your movie and you're sitting on stage and you're not allowed to respond to anything that's being said on stage. And that can be really frustrating because, again, you had this perfect plan, but it was raining on the day and you really want to say, it was raining, like there was nothing I could do. You want to defend yourself, but you're not allowed. And what I found that does is it makes you listen. The fact that you can't defend yourself, you're not, or in your mind isn't preparing the argument for when your time comes to speak, because that time isn't coming. And so your mind really opens up to what is being said. And and I find that with people that I work with who are AFI alumni, they all know how to listen. They actually stop and listen. And there's a lot of people who you're having a discussion with who, you know, they're already preparing to say, to defend themselves, or, you know, giving notes and receiving notes is one of the hardest things in the industry. But I think AFI really prepares you at least to receive notes and to give notes too. Um, One of the, I think, strongest assets of being a student at AFI is you shoot a movie and within 3 weeks you're watching the movie finished on screen. So what you did on set is really fresh. You remember exactly where you set the flag. You remember everything. And if you're gaffing or if you're operating for your friends, then you also remember their choices. And it's you very, very quickly you see the results of that. You see how that translates onto the screen. And then 2 days later, you're on set again. So now you can do it differently. And that speed of AFI, I think, is how I learned lighting. I think it was by constantly doing something on set, seeing it on the big screen, how it was edited together, you know, oh, next time I should put it a little higher or whatever. And then next time is 2 days later. So you really have a lot of opportunity. And once you finish AFI, that's not the case. You do a project and it might take a year for you to see what you did. And a lot of times you've done a lot of stuff in between and you don't remember what, you know, a lot of what you did or why or how. And
Yeah,
so
that's a really good point. Yeah, you're right. I haven't heard really someone talk about it like that. The speed at which you go right into your next project and apply what you learned.
yeah, it's self-correction. You're constantly self-correcting.
Yeah.
And because you're working on everyone's projects, you learn from your mistakes, but you also learn from the mistakes of the other movies that you were on. So you
Mhm.
can, it's really exponential growth, I thought, for me in terms of lighting. I came in with zero experience. And I think by the end of AFI, I had a sense of how I like to light. Um, And I think that was that constant, you know, do, watch, correct.
Yeah. Yeah. So your thesis film, equestrian sexual response, right?
Yeah.
That title burned in my brain forever. I just remember it's such a
It's a
memorable
famous one at
title.
AFI.
Yeah, yeah. But it was also very beautiful. Like you did such great work. You have horses in it, and it's but I also remember like I was looking up, we're just reminding myself about it. And I was like, oh yeah, I remember all these like team members, like, Courtney who wrote it, I was good friends with, and Zeke directed it. And then I saw Liz Hanna produced it,
Yes.
who went on to become one of the top screenwriters in Hollywood right now, wrote The Post for Steven
Yeah.
Spielberg,
Yeah.
right? But do you remember like making that, and like what you were talking about before of the pressure of like, this is our one chance to make a real movie?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, that movie, for all kinds of reasons, was I don't know if I've ever had as much pressure as I had at AFI in some weird way. Um, you really feel like it's all or nothing. And as a foreign student, I've had this feeling that I have to make it really fast, otherwise I won't get a visa to stay here. There's all you and you really feel like the thesis has to be your, you know, gateway into a career. And then you learn very fast that that's not necessarily the case. Doesn't have to be the case. Uh, but yeah, making that movie was I will never forget making that movie. It was a really intense experience, and in many ways, it was a daze. I think a lot of it was, but we got to be in a ranch shooting horses, and we shot a horse birth on 35, and um, yeah, there were a lot of moments that I think we'll all remember.
That's
And
right, a horse birth. Now I remember that.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
that's wild.
I had this plan of shooting the movie in anamorphic. Everyone wanted to shoot anamorphic, and we had this amazing horse ranch that was going to let us shoot there, and they had several mares that were expecting, and the mares have this device that triggers when they're going to labor, so you know that it's going to happen with a few hours in a warning. And we were in LA, and we got a call saying the horse is, there's a horse birth tonight. You got to get here. So I called Stephen Lighthill and I said, I need a camera. And we raided the closet at AFI and got an old, I think it was a 35-3 maybe with ultra primes, which were the lenses that were at AFI at the time. And that's what we took to the ranch. And then the horse ended up not being born that night. Um, but yeah, we ended up camping at this ranch, waiting for the horse to be born. There were a lot of rules that AFI let us bend because
Yeah.
of that. And but yeah, it was kind of an amazing experience.
So, I mean, you started out like as the cinematographer that got the leftover director, right? But you ended up being a very much in demand cinematographer, right?
At AFI,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess you could say that. I mean, the thesis, Zeke and I, throughout the Zeke was the director of my thesis film. I think early on we really decided we wanted to work together, and it ended up never happening for cycle films. But his project was one of the first ones to get greenlit for thesis, and I read it before I even shot cycle 3, and I was teamed up for thesis before I even got to cycle 3. And I felt really happy that I had that project because the script was incredible. Courtney is a genius, and I think everyone at AFI was excited about that project. And but yeah, so I was lucky with my thesis for sure. I didn't even look around. I read that script and I was like, I'm in. I'm doing this, and it
Yeah.
was it was great.
It just shows like the growth that you had in a very short time, and just basically, really, you can tell me, but it feels like based on doing good work.
Yeah, the thing about AFI is that I thought about that a lot because um, I came into AFI and I was thinking I was going to get kicked out, and then was able to choose my thesis, and that felt like a real growth. And I've been wondering, like, why is that not happening the same way out in the world? And the reality is, at AFI, everyone sees your work. Like, if the industry, if AFI is a microcosmos for the industry, then Narrative Workshop is the entirety of the industry. They're all watching your work.
Yeah.
And so it's not like that when you start working professionally. Your work um, it's really hard for movies to get distribution. Music videos had a bit of a, you know, there were things that people watched again in the in the 2010s and so, but it's still hard to get your work seen. And so I think you know, distribution is a huge it plays a big role in how your career evolves, like where your movie goes and who gets to see it. Because if your work is your calling card, then your work needs to be seen. And I find that to be something that at AFI you have the entirety of the
Yeah.
industry seeing your work. And so it really becomes it becomes easier for the people to find each other, the people who want to work together and who have affinities, um, because everyone knows everyone, and
Yeah.
you end up being able to pick. Um, and
Yeah.
I think that's harder.
I'd say the difference is like at AFI, everyone's making narrative films, right? You're all kind of like in the same I don't want to say genre, but like, format.
Sure.
Right. But when you go into the world and start working, like, you've been in music videos, you've done commercials, and then some people go into features, some people go into TV, and you kind of like can get stuck in those places. I don't want to say stuck, but you can
No, you really
have
can.
a long career in those places. It's hard to move to the other ones, right?
Yeah, I ended up shooting music videos after AFI. That was just, I think a lot because of the digital revolution. The red camera came out in my first year of AFI, and we all made fun of it. We thought, you know, it was film, film, film. But then, and then the DSLRs came out, and we
Mm.
made even more fun of that. And then as soon as we graduated, that's all we shot on for a few years. But I think the fact that those cameras were available and so cheap uh, had a big role in why music videos came back. Labels and bands were again like really trying to make creative work in the music video world. And there was a lot of demand for lower budget commercials, like what were called web commercials at the time.
Mm.
So, pretty quickly I was shooting music videos and commercials for, decent brands that you've heard about, and they were low budget web commercials, but for brands that you might have heard of. And so all of us, directors, DPs, whoever was involved in those projects, we were just trying to make them feel bigger, like they were the real deal. And I think there was a lot of opportunity in that short format of music videos and commercials after I graduated AFI, and that's where I sort of got my professional start. And then 4 years had gone by, and I hadn't shot a feature, and I was really getting worried, like, why isn't this happen, and how can I make this happen?
So you're
Um,
actually like thinking about it. You're not just like, oh, I have a career.
oh no,
You're
the whole
thinking,
time,
I
and
need
I
to
was
do.
shooting commercials and music videos as if they were features, which was really wrong. Now, looking back, I see the mistake I made in some of these projects of I was trying to make them a calling card for what I wanted to do, as opposed to make them the best at, in the genre that they were in.
Mhm.
Um, so, but yeah, at some point I realized, oh, I have to do something, and I started trying to get short films to meet a different type of director. Because the thing is, most of the directors who are doing music videos and commercials, and even nowadays, they all want to do features. The majority of them want to do features. So
Yeah.
your hope is that one of those pairings is going to turn into a feature. Uh, but it's actually harder than you'd think for also the directors to move from one world to the other. Um, so yeah, I always wanted to do features. That was always what I wanted to do. And I love commercials, love music videos, but I don't think I would be happy if that's all I was doing. And so I started just trying to find ways to go into the narrative world a little more, and started doing shorts just to meet directors who would maybe have a feature at some point.
Did that work?
It did actually. And I mean, one of the first shorts I did when I sort of made that decision became a feature like within 2 years.
Oh, wow. That's
So
crazy. Yeah.
yeah, that was great. But yeah, my first feature was actually with a director that I met at the DWW. I shot when I was at AFI. I shot a few of their boot camps, which are just some test exercises they do, and I met some amazing directors. And the play was to try and shoot their pieces, right? Like you do these exercises so that they meet you and then maybe you get to shoot their shorts, but that didn't happen. But then 5 years later, I got a call for a feature with one of those directors. So
Which one?
Maggie Kiley, the feature's called Caught.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know you shot Maggie's feature.
Yeah. Well, one
You
of them.
shot her boot camp and then you shot her feature.
I shot her boot camp. Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, who shot her short, her DWW short?
Chase Irvin. So she was
Oh yeah, yeah,
also.
no, he's yeah. Because I remember it had
Oh no,
Jesse
I think
Eisenberg
Chase
in
shot
it.
her first feature. I don't know if he shot her short. I want to say he did because the her first feature was based on that short she did at the DWW. But yeah, the AFI really feels like there's a lot there to and you make connections that might pay off really years later.
Right,
You don't
right.
know you're making.
Wow. So yeah, that did then, right? She remembered you.
Yeah, and I think, at the time there was Facebook, so you stay in touch that way. Um, but yeah, I interviewed for that job and I really wanted it, and it was my first feature, 2014. So it was 5 years out of AFI that I did my first feature. And
Wow.
I was working regularly as a music video and commercials DP, and it was really hard to get a feature.
Well, so wait, talk about who did you meet? How did those first paid jobs, music videos and commercials happen after AFI?
The first year out of AFI, so I came into AFI as an AC, so I had a bit of experience in that world, and I made friends in the years above and below me at AFI a lot. I still have really good friends from, the class that graduated just before and after my class. So when I finished AFI, the class that I graduated a year before, they were starting to get really busy. So a few of them knew that I was an AC before AFI and they hired me as an AC. So I did a lot of AC jobs that first year. And then at some point, I got recommended by a fellow DP in my class to do reshoots for a music video. Um, and I met the director on that job that I ended up, doing a ton of music videos with, a ton of commercials with. I got my first agent because of the work I did with that director, and that was one recommendation from one person at AFI. But even like there's writers in my class that I was friends with who then became directors, and I've shot for them. Um, so there's, yeah, again, I knew no one in LA,
Yeah.
so it all started there. Um,
So within the discipline, like cinematographers, they are helpful with they are helping each other. Like the one who recommended you for reshoots, because obviously it doesn't happen in the directing discipline. There's one direct, they're all it feels more competitive, inherently competitive, right? But I feel kind of you guys do help each other out in cinematography.
yeah, and also, when you start doing the first projects out of AFI, they're shorts or little. You need crew, and you really want the crew that you had at AFI. So you want your friends to come and crew for you. So there's a lot of that happening too. You're crewing for each other, and I don't know. I don't know when I was taught that, but I always learned that you never say no to a job. You say no and you recommend someone else.
Yeah.
You don't just unless it's a job that isn't worth recommending anyone to. But normally you pass the job to someone else. That's kind of like there's all these codes I think of being a DP that's definitely one that I think that's from my time ACing. I think that's like if you can't do a job, you recommend someone to do it. Um, so I think that happens a lot for cinematographers and because there is a technical side to it, it's really good to have sounding boards and people to talk to. So I think a lot of DPs have really good DP friends normally that they can talk to.
Yeah.
Some of my best friends are from my class at AFI.
I
Um,
Your class is kind of I'm looking at it, it all blurs in my head, right? But I'm looking at your class of just cinematographers, and it's like pretty legendary. Like,
yes, I think it will go down as the best class.
I mean,
It's
and I'm including you, right? And I'm including you, but like I'm just let me go through these. Matt Lloyd, like, right?
yeah.
Tall Lazar, Autumn Durald,
Mhm.
uh, Todd Van Hazel, right? Rick Diaz. I
Katie
mean,
Goldschmidt.
Jeff Bierman, Jeff Powers.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
what do you think it was of this year?
I don't know. I noticed other years at AFI a lot of those people are still friends with each other. And I think, I don't know, I do think, Matt Lloyd recommended me for those reshoots out of
Ah,
AFI. That's how I
right.
got that job. And so I think there was a lot of that helpful spirit that I think sort of trickled down and brought people up. I don't think every class is like that, even for cinematographers.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, so I think that definitely played a role. Amy Vincent was that was the only year she taught at AFI, so
Did
there
she
is something
instill
there.
that in you?
Uh, maybe, but I think she was just a phenomenal teacher, and she brought amazing people to the class. And yeah, I mean, I don't know why our class is so successful. I mean, the people are just crazy talented, but every, in LA, there's talent in every corner, and at AFI in particular. So that isn't the only defining element. I think, yeah, I don't know. Maybe someone will study that one day.
I feel like we need to get you all together, the whole class, and just do a little round table and just kind of
Yeah.
like do an oral history of the class of 2009. Uh, okay, I got to ask you about this because I was looking at some of your credits. Some of your one stood out just because I'm a huge fan of Weird Al, and you shot a Weird Al music video called Tacky, which was is it a true oneer? The whole thing one
Yeah.
shot?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. We got in that morning and we only had until like 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. to get it done. So we lit it, rehearsed it, shot it all in one like block of 6 or 7 hours.
Oh, that's pretty great because it's pretty intricate with different people coming in and out and
Yeah, we
dance
had an
moves.
amazing Steadicam operator and we had an amazing gaffer and obviously this incredible talent on camera. And the funny thing is, being Portuguese, I had no idea who Weird Al was. And when that video came out, a lot of people were like, "Wait, you shot Tacky, the Weird Al video?" And somehow for a little bit that became my claim to fame, and I had no idea why. Um,
It's probably better that way. Although if you didn't know who he was, you must have been like, "Who is this weirdo?"
yes, yes, but it was a fun project. Like it was, you know, everyone was just having fun in front of the camera, and that translates to what's happening behind the camera, I think.
Yeah, and he directed it, and I hear he's just like one of the nicest guys and just wants to have a good time, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yes.
What was there a music video that you worked on where you did know the band and you were like a big fan of?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say one of the yes. I shot Ringo Starr once on a master class.
You
I was
did?
operating, and
You
that
shot
to
a
me,
Beatle?
yes, I shot a Beatle, and
Dude.
I was like, a friend of mine was going to start shooting Mina from my class, Mina Singh, another incredible
Amazing. Yeah.
cinematographer. She was going to start shooting master classes, so I was going to come in as an operator on her first master class. And but then they lost an operator for another episode and called me last minute, and it was Ringo Starr, and they just gave me this 300 mil close up of Ringo Starr walking in and sitting at a chair, and he ends up sitting like really close to me. So the shot gets really tricky to like follow him and sit down. And I was like, I'm gonna blow this. It's Ringo Starr, and I'm gonna blow it, and we're gonna have to do it again. And it's my first day on this job, and I'm gonna blow the shot on Ringo Starr. And then I didn't, and it was the most amazing moment. But yeah, it was a lot of that happens in LA. Like you have these moments where you're just shooting these legendary people, and you gotta like remind yourself like this is awesome. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, music videos. When I think of my music video career, the band that I always think about is actually HAIM. So we shot me and this director Austin Peters, who I was working with. He was friends with them from high school, and we shot their first music video in their childhood home and the streets of the valley where they grew up. We
Yeah.
did that music video for like $700, something absurd. I borrowed a camera from Todd Ben Hazel from my class. He had an Alexa. We didn't, we paid him like pennies for the camera, and we went and did it with almost no gear, almost no crew. But I remember seeing this band and being like, these girls are incredible. Um, and then they blew up, and that music video that we did helped our career. We That's how I got an agent, was because I shot a HAIM video. That video got them signed, and then we did the second video that they released. And it's in many ways it's the job that got me to like move up a step in the work that I was doing.
That's really cool to hear. Like that you basically just did it out of like, just to do something, and it launches their career. And then, very quickly after your career, that's
Yeah, I
gotta be
mean,
so
they're just
special, right?
incredible. They're just incredible, and we got lucky that we got to do their video. It really is just that simple.
Yeah.
And the video is not in any way like my best work. It's they're the ones that stand out in the video, and you sort of go on with a ride. And that's I apply that to a lot of the projects that I pick when it comes to features. My first question is who's in it? Because I find that, actors are the they can make or break a movie. They're the performance, and they really carry the movie in so many ways. And if you know, a medium or a bad scene in the hands of a great actor can become a great scene. And so there's always something that you can't quantify that a good actor can bring to the table. And that's going to help your work as a cinematographer because, and this is something AFI really teaches you, but a pretty picture is not, that's not what you're there to do. You're trying to create an emotional response in the audience. And if things are prepped well, and if you have the right people on the day, you're really just facilitating the actors,
Yeah.
and what's happening in front of the camera. Um, every job is different. There are jobs that are way more technical, and that's not what you're there to do. Um, but yeah, I find myself really lucky when I get to work with those people that have instant sort of you know chemistry, I guess, or that star quality, whatever that is, because you can really see it. And then you have to do so much less, and you end up getting a piggyback ride, off their talent, which is
Yeah.
um, yeah,
Yeah. Use it. Wait, is the video Don't Save Me? That's the one?
that's the second one.
Oh, that's the second.
Forever is the first one.
What's it
Oh,
called?
Forever, I think.
Forever. Oh, okay. I was looking at the Don't Save Me
Yeah,
one. I was like, wow,
Forever.
this one is like, you made this one look like $1 million.
That's the video we did after they got signed by a
Ah,
label. Um,
you
and it
got a
was
little
great
budget.
that they let us do it. Because they could have easily gone and like get someone else to do it. I mean, P.T. Anderson now directs all of
I was
the
gonna say, like, if you ever run into PTA, you got to talk that you both worked with Haim.
yeah,
He loves them.
yeah.
Um, Talk about you've done spent a lot of time as a operator and then as a DP. I assume you operate a lot of time on when you're DPing.
Yeah.
That relationship that you're talking about, with you're the closest person to the actor usually, and how you create like a safe environment for them to perform, and anything special or unique that you do to work with actors.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I will say is when you're close to the actors on set, you really get to see things that you don't in the video village. Uh, and it's really frustrating sometimes because what's not working sometimes in the blocking or what might be, you notice little things that are happening on set, not necessarily on the scene, and you run to the director and you're like, I think it's whatever, this is tripping them up um so I think being in front of the actors on set, even if you're looking through a lens, but a lot of times you have the other eye open, so you're seeing two ways. I think that really gives you a perspective on what they're going through and um, what could be changed or what's happening that can be made better. So I always have a portable monitor on set so that if the director wants to be in there with the actors, that they can. Because the other thing that happens if a director is in the village is as soon as they yell cut, someone is over their shoulder making, you know, sharing thoughts or whatever. The and I notice a lot of times as soon as the word cut is said, the actors sort of look up to to get a sense because they're performing to a piece of equipment, right? And they need a human response to what they just did. So as the DP, a lot of times you are that person, but so is the first AC, the boom operator. the people who are right there with the actors, you lock eyes with actors a lot. And in the beginning, it can be really intimidating because you don't want to overstep the director. You're like embarrassed that they're looking at you. But then you realize that what's happening is actually like they're looking in your eyes for feedback. They're looking to see how it's working, you know, because you're always looking to see how your work can be better. And so that happens a lot where you're sort of the first person to interact with an actor. And actors, different actors need different things, and that's something you sort of in the first few days learn, you know.
Yeah, well, like
Um,
what are you allowed to do? Like, because you all, like you said, you don't want to overstep the directors.
right. Well, that really comes down to the director and the relation, you know, the relationship they want to have with the actors, right? Because you never want to, you know, I might not know, but they might be doing something on purpose to keep, I don't know. Like it's not, you know, but you know, marks is a big thing. Like, do you drop marks for the actors or not? And I've had actors kick marks out of the set, you know, literally kick them. And you're like, okay, well, that I got that, understood, message received. Um, so you find the things that they need, but also I remember Bill Dill, we had this cycle where I think there was a love scene of some sort, and he mentioned heaters, like how when people are on set and they're nervous, you get colder, your body sort of reacts a certain way. And the scenes that might be really difficult or really intimate, they're, you know, the actors might feel more vulnerable. And I remember him very specifically saying, get heaters. So that's something I always do. I make sure there's a couple of space heaters in the truck always. Uh, and and if there's a scene that I know is going to be hard for an actor, I'll throw heaters in there just so they walk into the set and they immediately feel taken care of. So much of what you do is just try to create an environment where people feel safe. And so it really depends what that is, what being safe means. But sometimes it might mean you know, covering the set so there's no distractions. If I'm working with children or with dogs, I did a bunch of dog food commercials for a long time, and I learned how to work with dogs. You know, it's like you have to keep distractions to a minimum. And with babies, I would create an entire wall of white or black so the baby doesn't have anything to look at except where we want the baby to look at. But you know, and some of those things you learn from take one to take two and take two to take three, and you're just, and on a feature, it's great because you really have time to start applying those things. And by the end, you can really have this great relationship with the actors where they really feel taken care of and like you sort of respect what they're doing. Um,
Yeah.
I couldn't give me any job on set except that one. I would try at everything. I would fail at most of them, but acting, I couldn't even attempt it. And
Yeah.
so, but it's still, you know, I love the mechanics of filmmaking, the sort of the engineering like we talked about. And I love sort of the more elaborate, or if I'm building little gadgets, or if the shot has something technical to it, I love it. And but you sort of, you know, the ins and outs of how things are done. But if you have, you know, and the fake side of filmmaking, right? You might have a beautiful scene and then you yell cut and the actress turns and there's like 20 clothespins holding her dress, you know, and
Yeah.
but but if an actor is an incredible performer, you forget you're making a movie. You've in that moment you really see something that can move you, and that's what you're trying to do with any, you know, any movie you're making, is you're trying to get at the audience in some way. Um, So to me, that's the most sacred thing on a film set is allowing actors to have that space, because what they can do, no one else can do. You know, like if you have a bad this or that, the weather is bad, you can try to light it. If whatever, there's a lot of things you can try to respond to and compensate for, but a performance, you know, it's kind of sacred.
Yeah. Yeah. No, really well said. I mean, I think Scorsese said it's 90% of your movie is casting, which, you know, is just going to what you said, which is the performance. So it's really is the ultimate special effect is as a good actor. And
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
yeah, I love that advice though from Bill Dill. That I love something practical that you can actually do, and just
Yeah.
like heaters. Like I've never heard that before, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You know,
And it makes
some,
such a difference. It makes
yeah.
a huge difference. And then you can actually see, like, when you're shooting the scene, like sometimes you're like, oh, the heater needs to be here, and you move the heater, and the actors see you do that. And it's all silent, it's just happening, but it's you're creating a camaraderie, where people feel taken care of. And I think that's important.
Yeah. You're talking about working with directors. I saw you have some directing credits on a show called Speakeasy.
Yes, that was an interview show.
Yeah.
Um, it was we it was this great comedian, Paul F. Tompkins, who would do an interview show with amazing people, always at a
Amazing
bar.
style. That guy's got the best fashion.
Totally. And the
Yeah.
the whole show is about, drinking fancy cocktails at fancy bars in LA. And at some point the show just kind of had, um, we did a lot of episodes, and at some point the show was like set in stone the way it worked, where the cameras go, and there really wasn't a need for a director. So that's, I think, when I got the credit. But yeah, I actually directed one commercial once, and it completely changed how I saw directors, because it's really easy to have an opinion on, like, if you see a choice that's already been made, like, someone shows up on set wearing bright red, and they're like, oh, I would never have picked that. It's really easy to have an opinion on a choice that's already been made. But when there's a blank canvas and you have to pick bright red from nothing, the fear of making the wrong choice totally overwhelmed me when I directed. And suddenly, like, the directors that I thought were too, that had the difficulty making choices or couldn't settle on a choice, I understood it. I understood it when I had to do it. And it made me, I hope, a better DP, because a lot of what I do now as a DP is I show like A, B, C, D, however many options I have to show until we get to the right place. But sometimes my job is to streamline the answers so it's easier to pick. And I think that comes from me having been in that position where deciding from nothing is really hard.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and and you
That's why
don't always
limitations are good. It's like you narrow down the choices. Yeah.
totally, totally. Um, so yeah, I think that one experience informed my a little bit how I should how I can help directors.
That's great. Okay, let's end with like what's happening now. I mean, you said you want to shoot features and you have a feature coming out called Lazarus, right?
Yeah, so the Lazarus just came out 2 days ago.
Oh, 2 days ago.
Yeah,
Congrats.
thank you. It's a great sort of coming of age thriller, which is a cool mix. We shot it in Portland, in this amazing location. Did some great stuff day for night, a lot of candles. So we have an aspect ratio change. All these, like,
Oh, nice.
um, these sort of,
Cinematic
yeah,
tricks.
fun
Fun.
fun stuff to try.
Yeah.
And we Ashley Judd is in it. She's incredible, and this amazing actress called Sarah Pigeon. So yeah, I had a great time. That movie really, it was a movie I went into wanting to do things differently. I found that a lot of my work was starting to look the same. I do Most of the features I've been doing are sort of at the same budget level, with, you know 15 to 20-day schedule.
Hmm.
Um, and as a DP, I sort of felt like I would take the responsibility of making the day and making the schedule, really, put a lot of that on my shoulders. And the way to be able to deliver would be to do these things that I already knew how to do. So, because you're always shooting people in rooms, people in cars, the the situations are not always that different. And so you end up falling into these things that you know how to do, and you can be quick, and it's going to look good, and so you repeat yourself a lot. And I sort of looked at my work and I was like, this all looks the same, like I have to change something. And I went into this movie trying to abandon sort of how I did those things. And it really changed the way I approach the scene, or prep, even, or my work with the director. So it was great, a great opportunity to try doing things differently. Um, yeah, and then I've done two features since, which I don't know when or how they'll come out, but yeah, last year I ended up doing three features, which was great. And
That's amazing.
even though now there isn't a lot of work, at least I have stuff that hopefully will come out and gives you a sense that you're busy even though you're not.
Does it feel like you are a feature cinematographer now?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you turn down jobs to make sure that you're taking features?
Yeah, I mean, I've turned down commercials to go do a feature for sure.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, yeah, yeah.
So lastly, like talk about the part of the job, that's not shooting, which is like the meeting people, pitching on movies and all that kind of stuff. Like how do you navigate that? How do you meet new directors? What is that like? Do you like doing that part?
I mean, I think very few people will say they like doing that part. I I pretty much don't do it, which
Yeah.
which is a mistake. But I have an agent who sometimes will bring me projects that I get to interview on, and a lot of my work just comes from word of mouth. People recommend me. Lazarus, uh, that movie was offered to Jeff Bierman in my class, and he
Huh.
couldn't do it, so he recommended me.
Wait, so this is still happening
This is still
14 years
happening.
later.
Yeah, yeah, it really
Wow.
is. So yeah, I think word of mouth is the the biggest way you get a job. Um, then if your work gets seen, it starts to things start to change, or if you're a part of a movie that everyone recognizes, then someone can say, "Oh, I want the person who did this." So I think things can change at that point. Uh, but I've reached out to directors when I actually have something to say. There was a director, we both followed each other on Instagram, and at some point she posted herself eating Portuguese pastries in San Francisco, and I had to write to her, and I ended up doing a music video with her. But that was just a natural interaction, and so I think one way to do it is you definitely have to be yourself, otherwise it comes across as fake. And I try that because everyone tells you have to do this, you have to put yourself out there, and I tried to force it and just wasn't. I could tell that it wasn't good. So you have to find your way to do it, and with time you just sort of there's multiple pockets that can bring jobs to you. An agent, word of mouth, your work playing either on TV or on theaters or even on your Instagram, you get jobs that way. Um, but yeah, I think that's the hardest part of, and especially DPs. I think most DPs have real difficulty navigating that side of things, or at least most of the DPs I know, because we like being behind the camera. We like that side of like the quiet worker. Um,
Mhm.
this is how I would describe it. So it can be hard, but yeah, you sometimes it's good to put yourself in a uncomfortable position. Sometimes it can really sort of make you crash and burn. So
I like the way
um,
you do it. I like that the organic way. You see a connection, a pastry, Portuguese pastry, and you're like, that's a natural comment that you would
yeah,
make.
and I wanted to know where did you get those pastries? That was the question. I want to go
Yeah.
eat them. Um, but um, but yeah, I think if you meet people in a natural way, then however that whatever that is to you, then that can turn into a meaningful relationship, a working relationship, or and then those can turn into friendships. But but yeah, I think for me the trick is to not overdo it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, you're doing something right. You're doing everything right because you have a wonderful career that started right after you graduated from film school, and it's turning into what you wanted it to be, which is features. And you were contemplating retirement, and my advice is please do not retire because
No, I was worried about retirement. I was like, oh, I have to save money for when I'm old and my
oh, I see.
my
Oh, I see.
back hurts, and I can't hold the camera long.
Well, take this as a moment to like recuperate and get your energy back because you're gonna come back big time because you got three features in 1 year. So Keep the momentum going, and super proud of you, and super excited for what you do next, man. And thanks for taking the time to do this.